to the cryptozoology show. It's been a while. Was recovering and some problems, and I had to go back in and out of hospitals. There's a lot of wild things that I've survived through. And boy, is the world in turmoil now and sort of things like that. There's a lot of stuff going on. We could be where I'm from, the 51st state, the capital of the 51st state of the United States, according to Trump. Because I've also, lived in the States and everything, it wouldn't bother me as much in that. And we have this fascinating theory that was proposed that this is the world's first, and we'll be covering that in a bit, that will blow your mind. It's very interesting and that sort of thing like that. My channels here are interesting. There's something wrong with the things when people visit them. For instance, the last one that I did had, at first in 3 days, it had 300 and some views. All of a sudden it stopped and kept going in reverse and it went down to 0. Then it climbed up to 41 and it still sits there, 42, 43. It'll go back and forth. So I've never seen such a wacky thing. I don't know. And other channels on here as well. So what I did is I started going to other malls and things and checking it out with different computers and that, because it's a completely different place than that, and got other people to watch it that usually don't watch cryptozoology shows, but just people I know. And I said, here, could you watch this? And then, right, and it's not counting on them. So I have no idea that they changed something over time that I'm not aware of, right, or whatever, right? But anyways, I'll have to, contact somebody about it or something, because some have been sitting like that for years, and I was sick all the time, and I just kept bypassing and wondering why this would be, right, and that sort of thing like that. But very interesting, but this theory will blow your mind. It's very interesting. And we also have another one, the reevolution theory. That's extremely, whether you believe in a god, like a Yahweh or some other version, or whether you believe you came from an amoeba, or whether you believe that the aliens made us, all of this stuff, no matter which version, this kind of fits in. And you'll see that actually the Darwin and them were completely wrong about how it actually works. And we'll be covering that after, and that sort of thing like that. We got some amazing, amazing things. I finally found the real tombstone photographs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them to Giorgio and Nick Redfern and David Childress. And if they want to also invite the Ken Gerhard fellow, because I know this guy loves Thunderbirds and that. And I got all the stuff that we need here to prove 100% that the photo that I have here is the legitimate deal. And I just need these guys to help me. The last thing, I'll tell them where it is, where it's hidden in an archive. They're going to go there, and then they can finally prove this giant mystery, this worldwide knowing. I used to talk with this all the time with Ivan Sanderson and Bernard Uvelmans, because I was always fascinated by this particular story, right? I believed it had something to it, right? Because of all these ancient native accounts of big, petroglyphs, like things and different things, and all their cultures mentioning that some had like no feathers, and then another kind had the feathers, right? So these thunderbirds, right? And so I just believed in my heart all this time, but I solved this already about 8 years ago. This archival group was putting together. It's not even set up yet, still, even to this day, sort of thing. But it's old-fashioned stuff here. And what they did is they archived a collection of real, authentic photographs from the earliest ones to the early 1900s of the old box kind that you would pull down with the spring, right? And I have the original stories of it, everything. I got all, when I send this to them, if you were a decent researcher, when I'm about to tell you and show you and everything, if you add it all up, the feasibility of it being a hoax is so remotely slim that it's, like near zero here. So therefore, in the 1800s, there truly was living pterodactyl-like monsters flying around, and maybe still actually exists, like the Ropin. I interviewed a fellow his grandfather saw in this island Karkar, around Karkar, whatever it is. I don't even know where this is, but anyways, I always remember the name of it because it's strange. So, but this guy was in his big dugout canoe sort of thing, and it was about 20 feet long, and this thing was bigger than it, going like on both sides, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, and Ivan Sanderson, I talked to him about when he saw the Congabato, right? So I know Ivan Sanderson was, like, to me, sort of the dad of real cryptozoology, even way more so than Bernard. But even way before those guys' times, I found zillions of articles. There was people interested in this. In the 1800s, there was one guy that the entire book of Bernard de Heuvelmans on the Track of Unknown Animals was covered in a newspaper article, pretty well the whole thing. The guy mentioned all these rhetoric to all kinds of stuff, and this is an 1800s one. So I believe that he saw this when he was younger, right? And said, hey, look at this monster, look at this, and kind of, went and dove into these things and was able to get the information, right? But I mean, so a lot of these things have all been done before, right? Like in ancient times, there was kings and everything that would capture dinosaur-like creatures and things, dragons and this sort of stuff. And it's always been a queen in Russia. This is 100% a fact. I don't care what any of these scientist guys says. They claim that in Wrangel Island about 4,000 years ago there was some still alive, okay? But even way after that, this queen in the 16th century, she was either the earliest or one of the earliest monarchs of Russia, right? She has all these paintings where she had these guys, their job was to follow her around throughout her whole days of all the different things that she does. It shows her and mentions that she had these pets. They called them some other Russian name, but it means a woolly mammoth, mastodon-like sort of creature there. And it shows her with them, and they got them on chariots. They tamed them like regular elephants. So they were friggin' alive in the 16th century because she has all this authentic artwork. And this guy's got every anatomical feature perfectly correct. Yeah, you could say, but a queen's not going to tell this guy, you in those days, if you made mistakes right off with your head, right? Like the generals, like I told you, that's why I know unicorns were real and dragons, because in ancient times, they had these, like a photographer, except he's an artist. And these people were extraordinary, my freaking heroes, some of them. I've seen artworks that make a lot of people today look not very good. Right? And that sort of thing like that. In ancient times, it were done, that's so-called by peasantry people, right? And there's a Battle of Roses, 14th century, sort of thing like that. And clearly this guy is riding a friggin' unicorn, man. You can even see that the guy made armor to protect the unicorn, and he's got like this crown-like thing that he puts over the unicorn's horn and slides it down. You can actually see the ring inside, proving that the horn is there. It slides in. It's like, that's how it's made, right? And that sort of thing like that. And this guy is not going to draw all this extra stuff when every second is critical, that you got to get the drawing done. What's happening right that second? Run there and get this. You do not put these things in there unless you're seeing what you were seeing, right? So I will argue this fact to the ends of the earth with every sort of these silly scientific people with this silliness that dragons didn't exist, or these kinds of things. They did, man. We made them extinct, just like what we did dinosaurs, and we'll be covering that after, and a whole bunch of newer evidence here that'll sort of, you'll see very likely that you can see there's a lot of validity to this, right? Also, we're going to be going on about little known these strange tribes that have been just discovered and things like that. A actual real Bigfoot tribe that the government already knew about over 100 years ago and still keep denying that they exist out there, and even almost no native groups even know about them. Missing 411 Trudeau with the Lake Monster connection and the Yeti connection, Bigfoot, aka, sort of thing. A very bizarre occurrence that was hushed up in things that we'll be covering later that is very strange, okay? Some other Thunderbirds, including an authentic photograph of a real unknown giant Thunderbird photo, a feather, and that sort of thing like that. Got some magic, mysterious items, everything from the mighty King Solomon's ring with the mighty Yahweh inscribed in it, where you can raise an angel and a demon and this sort of thing, right? These magic mirrors that were owned by queens, staffs that can shoot out wild stuff, and all kinds of wacky stuff where this seems to be really based on real stuff. And then we'll cover this after, and that sort of thing, with actually even some physical evidence that indicates that this probably is the case, right? As well as a couple of new info if you're a Patterson freak like myself, right, about the film, right? I got 2 new things for you is that I finally found what I was looking for ages. I finally found this quintessential important information. And also I discovered something by playing the film in a different sort of way, that there's something that people aren't noticing that's extremely also more proves the validity of the film. A chupacabra skull found, and I'm very sad that Linda Moulton Howell, I talked to her once briefly, gave her a few werewolf stories from around my region and that sort of thing. And I thought she was the cutest thing going. Like, I kind of had a crush on her. Sort of thing like that. But anyways, she'll be sadly missed. She was a wonderful writer and all this sort of thing and that. But she would have loved this sort of mystery. I got this picture of this chupacabra skull-like thing, right? That some either a space alien or some huge creature of some sort bit or laser chopped off some creature's head that looks like a chupacabra's that had to be super huge, whatever this thing was, right? Like, I mean, the most wackiest sort of thing that you've ever, really strange, and I've never gotten a resolution for this. And I'm just, especially UFO experts and stuff, have they ever seen something like this, if anybody has, right? And that sort of thing. Hypertrichosis of the Bigfoot connection and that sort of thing like that. Other strange mysteries here. We got the mystery flying elephants sort of thing that a lot of people would see after going out with an ancient relative of Trudeau over in the Quebec side. They drink like a case of La Base Saigon, right? And have some early form of poutine, possibly, that sort of thing. And then early mushrooms, and when the 60s and 70s came in, the mescaline and LSD and all this stuff was going on. So when these guys would leave these bars at 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday evenings, because in Ontario they'd bar it, you had to be shut by 1, so all the gang would go, and the Quebec police would be waiting for them to rob them for their weed that they might have, any money, or just beat them up and throw them in jail. It was a typical sort of weekend for an Ontario visitor, right, going there back in the day, right? But these guys would come out of these bars all kazooed, and some of them, seemingly were seeing pink flying elephants here, like this one here, right? Sort of thing like this. Now, this is, I believe, a Photoshop fake thing, and we're going to be talking about this. This is very interesting. You can clearly see how all these people's faces are crystal clear. In the photographs I'm going to show you, different things like this, this is not the case. The colors are also always wrong in these Photoshop. This is not exactly how they look typically, okay? And that sort of thing like that. So I don't know if the elephant was added extra length of ears. There was, and may still be reported, a cryptid elephant that certain groups claimed had way bigger, longer ears, as well as that even apparently a few circuses had claimed that they owned one of these titanic elephants that the natives seem to have thought that they were different, right? Like they were by them, like not really as a group of with the regular elephants, right? So maybe like a separate odd subspecies of some sort, right? Like my buddy the Magnusoc, the 100% legitimate cryptid, 1 billion% real. My mighty little donkey buddy from Madagascar, the Magnusoc, 100% real, guaranteed. Ancient manuscripts to today still hoof print photographs, different things. He's real. I would kill to catch this thing. It's my favorite one out of all the cryptids yearly in the entire world, right? Sort of thing like that. So, but this elephant may have existed or still may, right? Sort of thing. But the thing is that either that's they took some real photo and pasted that in sort of stuff and put these guys in front. You can see down where the trunk is. I suspect that this might even just been some circus's elephant. And you can see where the trunk is, there's smog covered over it. Somebody photo covered over that to not let you see that maybe it's a peanut in his trunk or a toy or something. Well, who knows, right? And these guys are all just, fake stuff here, right? That their faces are too crystal clear, all this sort of things, right? So that's one of the problems with these kinds of ones, right? So we'll be covering that and why I can tell you that this one is authentic compared to all these, because I know the source of this photo. I know everything about it now, right? And I'm finally well enough to be doing this sort of stuff again. So I had recovered quite well. I started doing some stuff again and then got sick again, but then finally I could get back and fish again and things like that. So I had put those shows off for quite some time and started working on them slowly now and that sort of thing like that, and have a whole wild sort of a good, better sort of things to work with now. So I replaced some stuff that got damaged and different things like that. So anyways, I'm getting up there again. So it's good to be back, but I really 100% believe that I solved the Tombstone Epitaph mystery. All we need is, because the ancient alien guys, or Giorgio, I think he has his own separate show seemingly. I don't know if the other one stopped or not. I've been catching up on them on YouTube. I haven't seen some in a while, right? Because I was so sick and stuff. But the thing is, these guys have the right connections and they got a big show, right? Or different shows, right? So plus I absolutely get such a huge kick out of Giorgio, Nick Redford, and the wonderful, sort of things about them, where they're, really, really entertain me, right? And I because Nick Redford reminds me of me a lot. We're similar age. I'm a little bit older than him, but not by massive amounts and that sort of thing like that. And he started, I think, young interest in this kind of subject too. And I've never seen a guy where every time, because there's not a lot of people that are like this, that spread across the board, right? And every time, I can't believe that. I'll say, how does he know that one, man? Because it blows my mind that he knows about it, right? You got to really do a lot of researching to know this kinds of levels, right? So I kudos to him. I think he's magnificent, right? So I love the way he almost reminds me of a space guy, right? He has these, he shoots out the Spock-like stuff, right? So I find him one of my favorite things in the world, that I would love to hang out with that guy once and go on a cryptid hunt to my favorite place, Canuck Chase in England there, with the pigman and these Sasquatch that still may possibly live there. The prisoners around there, and there's an experimental place, they still claim that they see these things out their window cells somehow, that they'll creep around at night, and there's this pigman dude, right? And there's even, I told you on another show, I mentioned that there was early reports of a pigman, Bigfootish creature, right? That was there even hundreds of years previous, right? So that sort of thing, and also in the United States and other countries, right? Not only the same one, but anyways, we got a lot of sort of ones to cover here, so it'll be a lot of sort of things, but And David Childress, because I really respect his work. I like he's balanced, right? Like he's very intelligent and well spread across the thing and not closed-minded, right? So this is why I like these researchers. And I think that they, because they got the cloud and a little bit of cash here and all that kind of stuff, they'll be able to easily, once I give them the information, tell them how to get it, they'll be able to convince the people that own this to let them look with the original and bring, because that's what it is, they're all original photos. Let them bring a guy to that can, tell if something's been tampered with or that it's an authentic paper from those eras and all that kind of stuff, right? Because it seems to be like with all the rest of them that are in there, right? Okay, and that sort of thing like that. If they can prove that, what's the Forrest Gallant guys and the Joe Nichols and everybody out there going to say? And I like Forrest Gallant a lot. I have nothing but the highest respect for him, actually. He's very open-minded. He's willing to listen, and he's proving scientists that, you know what I mean? You can't just always listen because somebody says it's extinct. You can't keep ignoring native reports just like they do, the Sasquatch phenomenon, all this, sort of thing. But these guys are wrong about these kinds of this aging of the earth and these different things, and we'll cover this after. But the thing is that what are these guys going to say? I mean, this was a living pterodactyl, living right? Like in the 1800s, man. It's real. It's 100%. Everything matches up. I got the original stories, also side stories that were written around at the time. By other people that had witnessed and hammered up on the Tombstone Epitaph General Store. I got all the stuff here. So we'll be going through that, and I'm going to send them more of the photo to show the general store itself. I'm not showing the whole thing here because I want them to have the full sort of things, right, where they can use it properly and that sort of thing, right? So, I mean, it's going to be very interesting. I forgot to shut that off, but I love this music. Anyways, listening to Ultima 6, I believe it is. Richard Garriott, if you've never seen that, if you do like video games, if you've never played those old ones like Ultima and these sort of things, they're legendary stuff. I mean, this guy was a genius, my freaking hero. Sort of thing like that. I actually programmed a little lowest budget dungeon game once and got it working. It was, I don't even remember how to do some of it now. Like, it would take a while. I'd have to refresh myself. But it was this fun little coding sort of thing. But sort of back in the day, right, of the old DOS stuff and that sort of thing. But very entertaining, but beautiful music, right, and that sort of thing like that. Absolute genius, like just the storylines and the all the incorporation of different sorts of unusual things in it that made it like a earliest sort of like. This guy's like the godfather sort of the RPG world, right? So kudos to the, this one's, I believe, called Stones, possibly, or Pebbles, Stones. It's some kind of name like that. One of those two. And it's beautiful, like, I mean, if you listen to it. But anyway, so we'll continue on here, and you guys will see some amazing things. And I got too real for the Joe Nichols skeptics, for that other show there where they always claim that eels are garbage bags or other silly stuff. These people wouldn't know an Angola from a moose, and we're going to go through that. I have two real, 100% authentic, non-CGI films that clearly prove 100% that Titanic eels of epic proportions actually really do exist in fresh water. And sort of thing, and that mobile sea serpents exist. These giant ones have been reported all worldwide, where they're like a giant worm. They go up and down, like when I saw Ogopogo, and that sort of thing. And also when I was in this Going reservoir, a similar like creature of some sort that it was just so far away, but it seemed to be way bigger than the Ogopogo thing, whatever it was, right? Like, but I'll show you an actual real one of these where the Ottawa River monster. This is what it supposedly would do, and many lakes where now they're extinct, possibly, or maybe not actually at all. And I'll be explaining this, but these are two real, legitimate films. We shouldn't be arguing the forest gallants. All these people should not be arguing that these things don't exist because they 100% do. I know I hooked one in the 70s. I was towed around in front of multi-witnesses, multi-marinas. This thing kept doing actually one, two, yeah, there was that old one still there, three, four marinas. That's how far that this creature kept pulling us back and forth, right? And when the hook straightened out at the end, finally, right, this sort of thing, because I mean, I had regular freshwater size hooks on that were designed for sturgeon, but not like that sort of thing. Like you know what I mean? They're a safety zone in the middle, right? Sort of idea. Because I mean, if you got them too big, the fishing was so slow, you're only going to get super tighten, right? Sort of thing, which often I would do. But I mean, when I was guiding, you wouldn't do that sort of thing. But the slime was on the line for massive feet way up it because this thing tried to roll a couple of times. And it was hundreds of pounds. I mean, I reeled eels as big as you could ever find in any photographs in North America, up to about 5.5 feet. Several of them over the years, like between 5 to a little over 5.5 feet in this sort of range. And saw one dead go by about 7 feet long, and that sort of thing like that. But that sort of thing. But these things weigh nothing. I mean, they're only still like the circumference of, I don't know, if you put like 4 broom handles together and like made them all round, if you know what I mean, like fit them all in a circle, that's typically about the size of like a big fat one, right? These are different. These are mega titans where they all of a sudden, I don't know if they're a separate species or not, or this unique thing that goes on, whatever the case, right? Sort of thing. They pack on like massive hundreds of pounds here, and they're titanic, like monstrous sort of things, right? So we'll be covering that, but the other one proves these ancient stories worldwide of these serpentine-like sort of ones where they said in the spring and fall they would find these big tracks, like a pipe that looked like a giant snake sort of thing, right? Like some kind of big snake-like track you would typically see. And they were normally from 1 to some over 4 feet around, right? And this clearly proves this and shows it coming out of a small body of water that going all across the land here. And this thing's got to be at least 30 some to early 40-some feet, possibly. Maybe a bit longer because you don't see all of its body. A lot of it's still under the water. But anyways, I'll cover these two amazing, extraordinary films that finally, the first one, I can 100%, I blew it up. I show you all the frames. I can show you regular Angolas. You can match it up. Any scientist that or any eel expert would agree with me if the guy's not going to lie because he's worried somebody's going to poop on him, right? But I mean, if they were telling the truth in their heart, they know fully that yes, this is a giant Angola. Yes, it's in a microscopic, tiny little lake. Yes, this thing is monstrous proportion, way a zillion, like so much bigger than what would be accepted by science. Therefore, proving these Loch Ness monster-like creatures really exist all over the place. They go in and out of underground caverns, swollen rivers. They climb over land, crawl back into it, and once they eat out so much of food, they take off the same way they came in, or some other methodology, and hit a new lake, right? And may not visit it again for 10, 20 years, who knows, right? So there's these mobile lake monsters as well, besides giant eels and other strange creatures, from sharks to unknown sea serpentine-like ones, like the Thames River, the plank monster, these kinds of ones, right? There's a lot of different kinds out there. So anyways, we'll be covering them all soon, so... folks hear this takeover Canada theory. This is really interesting. This psychic is on one of the shows. I actually took it down, but I'm sure some of you would remember this, that the psychic on one of my older shows had said that Trump was going to have 2 golden rows, okay? So he said, though, that it was weird, that is like as if he had a row and then some kind of rest he couldn't understand, and then he's going to be like as if he wasn't sure if something happens to the guy, like he's sick, then he's a president again, or some kind of weird thing like that. So this is the second golden row. And he said that he believes that he had this strange sort of vision that there is a bunch of really bad characters here, sort of billionaires like sort of characters, right? And that when Trudeau was actually placed there by powerful puppeteers, right? Trudeau had this buddy, some billionaire guy and all that sort of stuff. Conveniently, right after that, Trudeau started going to all these countries and making these wacky deals with them. Everything from giving them $1 billion for global warming when they're already one of the hottest places going, right? And all kinds of schemy sorts of things, and billions now missing and stuff. And apparently this guy worth billions, right? So interesting, right? So here's the thing. Some puppeteers out there, okay, use Trudeau to bankrupt Canada, basically. We're in such massive debt now already, okay? So this has already was planned. The second that the Trudeau got in power, that's his whole purpose, was being manipulated and puppeted by other billionaire people. And he started going to India. All of a sudden, they lost all their money. They had to be chipped. Rupees aren't, you can't really, almost nobody will take this stuff, right? And that sort of thing like that. So it's all like electronic chip because they want you like a puppet, right? Sort of thing like that. So now, all of a sudden then Trudeau visits each of these sorts of places to China and all these different crazy stuff, right? It could be that this guy was used to drain the funds of Canada overspending, right? And that's why he's actually resigning now and that sort of thing. But this was the whole purpose. Now we are not going to be able to battle properly because the creditors can shut you down, right? So now, all of a sudden, he goes and visits a little while ago the Trump, right? How do you know that these guys, this is the whole thing? So now Trump tells you that he's going to take over Canada. He's putting these tariffs on it, all these kinds of things, right? These guys are all, this is a game. What's going to really happen here is everybody's being puppeted here by some billionaires, this Musk character, who knows, Bill Gates. Maybe it's the Owl Monster gang of Bohemian Grove running them all, right? Because you got to wonder, like, why every year piles of people will go and sit and pray to a giant 40-foot owl monster, right? Like, mind you, I must admit that he's a wonderful narrator, and he is mentioned in the Bible, right? So that they don't acknowledge 100% that he exists or doesn't, because he just says that these women pray to this guy and then sacrifice their children, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what they're praying to is real or not. However, it literally could mean that, right? So, and that would make more sense almost in a believable way, because why does the most powerful elite always go to this place every year and have all these wacky meetings? So as far as you know, this is a bunch of these Bilderberger, all these kinds of guys that do all these sorts of stuff, right? This is the whole idea, was purposely, because then now it's the U.S. will take over its sort of fake debt, right? That really is, because everybody's making fake money the United States and all these countries really don't have any money. It's not based on real gold or anything, right? Like it was done by crooked politicians out on a summer break where these billionaire characters gave them big funds to switch this, where a bank can create fake money, right? And there's kinds of things like this. So the idea is that the psychic believes that somehow Trudeau and even the Trump and these different ones are this was some kind of scheme built up for years, that Trudeau actually purposely has bankrupted us, now getting us all pretending we're going to put tariffs on the United States. Whoop-a-dee-doo-da-day. The United States could stop delivery tomorrow morning and wouldn't even barely notice us. This is how the facts. There's like 40 million people here, right? And a lot of them buy Canadian stuff and all kinds of things. So really, you cut down now about 10 million that might be buying an American product every sort of thing, right? This is nothing. There's more illegal immigrants in New York City than that. So the thing is that they can actually absorb the debt. There's all kinds of idiots that are on here saying, oh, the U.S. made a mistake. They lost $1 trillion. All this stuff is BS. These guys have this all set up. So even if you're losing tomorrow, it's other people that are manipulating them that are even way more powerful, that somehow have schemed these guys to do this, so that eventually we're going to be like chip robots here. Basically, that's what's going on. This has purposely been done. The Trudeau guy purposely bankrupted Canada, sort of thing. This is what the belief is. And I mean, if you think about it, it would make a lot of sense. The guy visits all these countries. All of a sudden now they're getting shipped all these stupid things. Now we're going to be fighting terrorists back and forth, as if we could really compete with them. Seriously, right? And that sort of thing like that. If they wanted to, like people talk stupid. Like, as for instance, if even though these billionaire oil companies wouldn't like it, there is a way more oil. They don't need Canada's oil or any country's oil if they wanted to open the pipes, if they really wanted to, okay? So that's one thing. All these things, these guys, electricity and everything, with a little bit of manipulation of the system, could easily have it up and running. And so these other countries threatening this and that is not really a reality here, right? And this sort of thing like this. So this is all BS. They're getting, Trudeau's going out here to forget, everybody's forgetting the zillions and missing funds, all these zillions of things that he's gotten away with from day one that a regular person would be in prison for 100 years with Big Bugsy, right? And that sort of thing. But all this stuff is, the public is so now mad at the Trump guy, it's all a scheme. The one guy is being manipulated by another, but all at the end that the real agenda is to make like a North American sort of thing where now the rules of Canada, these guys can start, taking all the oil, doing this and that, because it would be the U.S. that would be sort of like, running the thing. But really, the Trudeau caused all this and sold out to probably other zillionaires and stuff like this, and it's some kind of giant scheme. So, I mean, you can't, it's a theory right at this moment, but it's very likely that Canada is going to have some titanic problems, and the U.S., and this guy, and I told you, so we mentioned this on other shows, that probably if Trump was in the thing, he'd be able to get the Russians to stop this war. And this is what the psychic guy is. So this is all some kind of wacky scheme at the end by some super powerful elite for some reason, like to gain more lands and all this sort of things. And other things weird that people don't understand is that theoretically nobody owns anything in Canada. It was actually leased by the Queen, whoever runs now the Queen's stuff. The land was leased. It was an experiment by the British. So, I mean, if you tried to say made it the Canada thing, like the U.S., right? Technically speaking, the Queen is leasing this. She actually owns the land. A lot of people really don't understand, but that's actually true. I like, even though you have a land grant piece of thing there, and the Queen isn't going to come over and throw you out of it, on the reality basis, this is a thing, right? So it seems like that this is a bunch of this Elon Musk guy's put in there now. He wants to fire every government worker if they don't report to him weekly how many times they've scrubbed their bum and all that sort of stuff going on, right? This is all set for confusion for some wacko reason, either to bankrupt the system, to do some kind of wacko thing that is the scheme here. So definitely this Trudeau, probably, and all these other characters may be all intertwined, and this is just like a giant puppet show, right? That was orchestrated by the big powers to be, whoever they may be, the Sound Monster Gang or whatever, right? Like any of that sort of thing, right? Sort of thing like that. So we may be in huge kinds of troubles here and all kinds of stuff. But now this psychic guy had said that somehow these problems will drift away, like as if the Trump guy may then all of a sudden switch all these things and everybody will be happy after. And this is really weird. This is what he said. He said that then after this kind of thing, the second row, that something about his son, this Baron guy, he may have something to do with some kind of weird thing. But later on, I don't know if he does like, the Trudeau thing where father like son sort of stuff. Maybe he'll be in power at one moment or some sort. But whatever the case, apparently this Baron Trump guy may have some little thing to do with our starting to get near the ends of times here, where once these Jewish built this temple around this area here, or like but a bit farther off, right, and that sort of thing like that, this is where this mighty Yahweh is supposed to release these underworld, Lucifer the gang, right? And there's going to be, they say, these guys that you can't, like some kind of killer locust and that. How do you know they're not some kind of AI robots that may even be already starting to be made here by this Musk guy or whoever runs him, right? Like maybe all these guys are fake in the sense that it's somebody else backing them, right? They're just like puppets, right? Sort of thing like that. Because I mean, sometimes when you listen to someone, it's hard to believe they could be that genius and maniacal sort of stuff going on, right? But anyway, so now they got this little a character, and she's as schemy as any human being going, right? I mean, how she worked for Trudeau all that time and pretending she didn't know all this stuff, and now she wants to be the Prime Minister. I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her. I have nothing against her. I kind of find her entertaining, actually. But I mean, yeah, complete all these guys are, it's a scam, right? Like, so the whole thing is that somebody manipulated Trudeau to get into power in the first place. This is a long-term scheme that they have of some sort, right? To eventually do this sort of thing. But the psychic guy said that there's these killer things that you won't be able to kill, and that this could be some kind of AI robots of some sort. So you could, probably blow one up, but literally when you take these translations, right, if you killed it, you could then put it back together, like the parts, right? So it can't be killed. You see what I mean? Like, you could read it that way, right? And since we know they use all kinds of technology, these UFOs in the skies, this would be very believable in that. So we may be heading towards some kind of this bankruptcy thing, but there's supposed to be this 7 years of seemingly, like, it's still a bit of, but more relaxed here. So I don't know if this has anything like, will Trump start to change now that the scheme, they've gotten whatever it is that they wanted, and now you're all going to look great again, and that sort of thing. But some kind of scheme here. So I don't know if Trump is manipulated by somebody else and he doesn't even realize he's being manipulated, because that sort of thing like that. Because one thing I do like about Trump is at least when he says crazy, whatever stuff he's saying, he does actually do it a lot of times. So I give him 1,000,000+% this way compared to many other sort of politicians over the ages that they don't keep their word, right? Especially like Trudeau. Right? So that sort of thing like that. So you may believe this or not, but I think this is some way to get North Americans chipped and under this sort of control. I believe this guy. It makes sense to me. I can see this. We're heading for turmoil times, for sure, right? Our society is so corrupt. I mean, every single ad you'll see, like if you're a single person, right, looking for friends with benefit, all this kind of stuff. I mean, these people are just text divorcing and all that. I mean, so low stuff here. Really. I mean, so our society is getting very sickened, right? Like with polluted sort of mentalities, right? And that sort of thing like that. So it's very feasible that this guy could be right. So it's an interesting theory, but I mean, it could be very straightforward that this has been a long plot scheme to bankrupt Canada. Now Canada can pretend that they're going to put all these sanctions, but at the end of the day, it's going to do diddly squat to the mighty U.S. sort of thing, right? And somehow this is to do something, like either maybe take it all over, maybe they're worried that, so they're going to help the Russians out, be all nice to them, but then really what they want is Canada to be like a North American thing where you can block all the borders of all that sort of stuff, possibly. Like, who knows, like some kind of thing, but there's some for sure, and it likely is probably true because this Trudeau is supposedly, you know what I mean, worth gazillions of bucks now, mysteriously, right? And all these kinds of things. I can see billionaires wanting to control fully countries and all this, and there's just a handful of people now that are running the show that we're seeing that may be puppeted by bigger sort of ones, like this alien owl monster guy or whatever, right? Some kind of version like that, or some head bigwig that we don't know about, right? Sort of thing like that. So very interesting, but anyways, you can take it as you will. But I mean, if you look at how Trudeau was brought in, all of a sudden these billionaires were puppeting him from behind the scenes, and this cash seemingly to get voted in, and all this sort of thing, right? And all of a sudden the spending and the spending and the spending and spending and saying, oh, don't worry, the budget will take care of itself, and zillions more spending and misappropriation beyond human comprehension, billions missing, a trillion or several trillion in debt, probably something like that. And that this makes us, if these guys wanted to shut off the credit and all this kinds of things like that, many other ones own Canadian banks and run other things, right? So, I mean, these guys could shut us down, and maybe that's the whole purpose, to then, and then all of a sudden say, oh no, you know, we need to make sure all of our sins can be identified, to know the original Canadian ones from those ones, and all this kinds of stuff. It's a chipping like scheme possibly for the future or whatever, right? So take it as you will, but it's very feasible. So anyways, it gives me the creeps, but there's a lot of strange things going on in our world now, and every second there's some new, and I think that the Trump guy and all these other guys are actually somebody else is flinging this stuff to them. Yeah, you know what I mean? Or knows how to puppet them correctly without them realizing it, possibly, some of the stuff. Who knows, right? Like any kind of scenario like that. But for sure, there's schemes afoot, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, yeah, you know, but this, what I was telling you, is on another show about Trump. I believe, even myself personally, that he will be able to get Vladimir Putin on board and all that sort of stuff. It's a totally different thing. That the Biden was completely the wrong human being across the board to ever been in power for any reason. I mean, the guy didn't even know Canada. He kept calling his aloneness here. he kept calling him Prime Minister Putin, wanting to meet him here, right? So, yeah, you know what I mean? Lack of the Geritol there in the mind, right? Sort of thing like that. So, but anyways, out of the two, obviously Trump's more swifter. He's out there, but I mean, he's, yeah, you know, not as, there was definitely, that guy shouldn't have never been in power. Some of the stuff, the weird laws that they made is beyond human comprehension of strangeness. Even stranger than Donald with the red, and that sort of thing like that. And plus, I just find him more amusing. I don't really, like, he doesn't bother me anyway, so I don't, but the idea at the end of the day is that somebody really out there, I don't believe it would be just Trump, it's other stuff going on here, that somebody's controlling this from behind the scene. I think the psychic guy's right, and I think we're heading into rough times in the very near future here, and maybe get a lapse again, like he said. And then all of a sudden the big evil grapple is going to come, right? So doesn't sound good anyway, so I hope not. Anyways, hopefully some more cryptids could be discovered before these times come, and hopefully Donald stops the tariffs and all these kind of guys like this, you know, sort of thing, right? But anyways, it gives me the creeps. But if you analyze and look at all the different countries he was visiting, all of a sudden a lot of them are getting chipped. All these kinds of stuff, they're broke now. This, that. You could see there might be some kind of worldwide scheme to get everybody chipped, like the mark of the beast, like stuff, right? Like, and this kinds of thing like that, take over all of, like, because if Canada's trillions of debts and the creditors close it down, it's bankrupt city, right? Well, then what, right? Like, so they could just absorb the debt and now own us, right? You see what I mean? Like, so, you know. So anyways, it's interesting, but I wouldn't be surprised, because what do billionaires do? They're addicted to money, right? Like, sort of thing, just like a Bigfoot researcher's addicted to a Bigfoot, right? Sort of thing. It's the same concept that these guys go to the most extreme overboard, and certain Bigfoot researchers do. And just like myself fishing, a certain fishermen, I'm insanely hardcore as you can humanly get, right? Like, so you sort of like I can understand why, if that's all you love is money, that's what you want to do, is make more money, right? So it's all understandable, but it's a shame that there's no heart of humanity anymore, that instead of just the one or two kings having trillions, why not a little bit, you know what I mean, where everybody can have at least somewhat of a nice time, right? And that's where they go wrong with this sort of stuff, right? But anyways, we'll continue on. A little bit more there. I wanted to talk about some update there that I'd forgotten to mention that was really important. This psychic mentioned this guy on my show years ago, and we had several about this sort of thing, right? And this Baron Trump guy is the most insanely impressive to me. I saw his face ages ago, and he freaked me out even then. There's something about this guy that is really wild. Okay, so here's this guy. Whenever Donald, I don't know, he's somehow these Russians. This is what this guy. This psychic says that somehow that this Trump will be able to sort of, and I've mentioned this before numerous times about, they got the wrong guy when they had Biden in. I mean, that guy's mind was not there, right? You know, I don't know what he was like when he was younger, but certainly not a Trump here, right? But now this sort of thing like that, even though Donald says some wild stuff, that's completely, you know, fascinating to say the least. However, at least the guy, I will give him this, that when he says he's going to do things, he's going to, you know, he does quite often do these things, right? So, but here's the thing is that somebody is running these people from behind the scenes, okay? Now, what if it's possible this guy says that this Baron Trump has something to do with towards our end times? So is this guy going to become like some kind of the next president, like after, right? Because now he's all of a sudden getting in this political scene, and a lot more are impressed with him. He's wiped out every single opponent so far that has attacked this guy. I'm listening to him, and I'm totally fascinated by him, because he's very smart. Like, you don't, when you're having debates and things like that, you can't let them flutter you, right? And this guy is completely different from his dad in a lot of ways here. And this is something like not to be mean here, but let's say that this psychic, because he can't understand, some of these visions are strange to him because they're in dreams, right? So he doesn't know if the Baron Trump is the Antichrist guy or has some thing to it or something, but this is when this guy's going to be around. And they said the whole world will be, and this guy speaks in an intellect that is very unusual. I mean, look at how meticulously dressed this guy's, like a human AI robot here in some ways, right? And this sort of thing like this, right? And so what if this guy is that? Right? But at the end of the day, for sure, I think that the psychic's right. And this theory that it's very feasible that Justin Trudeau was a puppet, and this Barron guy, and these guys were all built for this years ago to manipulate the system. It's all fake stuff here. They're using all these different guys to have different agendas, but somebody's puppeting them all. So I don't know if it's this, you know what I mean, some evils of some sort, or this, you know, like whatever, the Guardians, these kinds of things. Whoever this is very scary to me. This guy in our future right now, I can feel it even in my soul, that I've never felt this before, all these ages. A lot of times I laughed, like when it said the 2000 thing, remember the 2000 crazy thing, it was all going to do this and that, and these guys made a fortune scamming people. I had an old computer from the 70s that actually had the 2000 thing still in it. Already it didn't do anything, it just went to zeros. So it'd be like 01 or like whatever, it was something like that, right? And I roared up and everything worked. So these guys purposely scheme gazillions of people, right? And that, and then the 2012 predictions and all these things, none of these I could see, and the psychic convinced me because of his accuracy all the time, that for sure that's not what it's going to end here, right? And that sort of thing like this. But this guy, he says that this guy has something to do with more towards the end time. So he doesn't understand it, but he sees his face quite frequently. I think this guy's going to come into some titanic power eventually of some sort here, and maybe solve all these problems in the world. Maybe this is that guy, or he's some puppet for him that is hidden in behind the scenes. But this guy's brilliant. So I have nothing, actually. I'm much more respectful of him when his speakings are very highly intellectually intelligent. This is somebody of wisdom, of much, much more age in my sort of realms, right? Like we've seen a lot of things and been a lot of places and know how to deal with different sorts of characters, right? But this guy, wow. I'm impressed. He freaks me out. There's something, this weird aura that I do not like about him that could be true, that he could be some kind of, you know, like even if it's not his fault, he's just a kid born, but maybe this, you know, entity is, uses his, like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, right? Like some kind of thing that could be, or that he's just another puppet, but whatever puppet he is, he's brilliant, and I think this guy's going to have a lot of influence across the planet, and not that massive far off in the distance. And I think this Trudeau and all these characters are a pile of scam artists that all got together, and this is some kind of thing to either bankrupt something or other, to take control of maybe North America, whatever it is. It's some scheme-like thing to cause confusion, kerfluffle, everything. But the end result is there's going to be a titanic war here, and we're not going to, you know, like, so I'm very scared. Like, I admit the first time in my life, I actually, but at least I got to reel in a zillion fish. You know, I went all over the planet, like sorts of places. I've done 10 zillion things, winner of hundreds of mass open water, frozen water tournaments, and all kinds of things that I could say, you know what I mean? I certainly have lived so far a more exciting life than a lot of people have, and that I've met famous people from royalty, shook the Queen of England's hand, to all kinds of crazy stuff that is mind-boggling. Right? So, I'm telling you that even my senses, I'm kind of weird myself for sensing that something's not good and I better get out of here, and I've been right every time, sort of thing. And there's something about this guy that it blows me away more than any human being I've seen in ages. I'm nervous of him. I don't trust him, of course, right? And he could be one of those guys, but maybe he isn't one of those guys, and he's just part of the thing that's going to happen, right? But whatever the case, he'd be an interesting fellow to meet. I would treat him like a normal human being, like anybody else. He wants to hang out and go, whatever, have a beer or something, whatever he wants to do, right? But I find him totally fascinating. Like, I mean, he is brilliant. So I don't care what anybody says, if they say he's nuts or whatever. I've heard all kinds of things that apparently he's, this or that, but I don't think so, man. Either that or some genius has something earpiece inside of him and some guy talks to him from behind the scenes, I suppose. But I don't think so. His aura, everything about this guy tells me that he's going to be of quite a bit of greatness here. So get ready for this dude, because he's going to be on these scenes across the thing, right? And just like the mighty Final Fantasy VII, I still say the greatest near RPG ever made, man. Like, I love that storyline especially. I know all kinds of people argue 8 and 9, 10. All of them are fantastic. Like, from the first one, still one of the greatest games ever in history. But for some reason, that Final Fantasy VII it was never done like that before, and it was so creative, like a lot of new things there that you never saw before, and the wonderful storyline. I mean, it's fantastic, and this music is one of the best battle musics on the planet, and this may be in our end times here. We may be in for some wild battles. There's gazillions of things we're seeing in the skies. Every second there's tariffs, this, that. The stock markets keep crashing. All kinds of wacky stuff here, dropping and all that. There's this guy, maybe some kind of thing to all of a sudden save everybody. Who knows? Like some kind of wacky stuff, but he's definitely part of the equation of these end time sort of things. So, and this guy, possibly ours sort of thing, maybe he's older, I don't know. But somewhere in the future, this guy is going to have a major impact on this planet, and he trips me out. But I also find any human being like this with his wonderful, incredibly wise answerings and how to chess to switch the opponent back onto this lady here, as for instance, right? Wonderful stuff. I mean, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So, and his suit is like, everything about this guy is like something that you could imagine like an antichrist like kind of guy going on would be, because everybody's got to like him and be impressed with him, right? So, but I'm at the same time, if that is that guy, of course, you can't like this kind of stuff, but at the same time, you gotta respect and admire the brilliant mind in here. So I'm gonna stay off the fence in this. I don't want to pick on some guy who say the demon monster when maybe he's just part of the equation, right? So I'm just gonna leave it at that, right? But this is what they claim, and this psychic guy has not been wrong so far. This guy believes he's psychic because he was taken by aliens and experimented on several times, sort of thing that he can recall. And after that, he's not sure, right? But he believes that there's some kind of chip inside of him, and somehow they send him visions of these sorts of things. So I maybe that's how it works. I have no idea. But all I know is that I got to agree with this guy. And other people that have been mentioning him for years find him mysterious. I think that this guy has been waiting, And that's what one of some of the predictions, like when this Antichrist guy comes, will be turmoil, this, that, all these kinds of stuff, and then this guy will be able to smooth the world, right? Like, and all that sort of stuff. Like, he could be the representative of this without even his knowledge that he thinks he's doing great stuff, and really it's, who knows, right? Like, but anyways, this guy is extremely impressive, extremely to be feared, I suspect, in the future, and to be a mass impact somewhere on this planet. That's what the predictions are, so I'll leave it at that. I don't know when this is happening, but I got a bad feeling as sooner than later, right? Banks already exist in Canada where there's no money. Machines, mysteriously, for several years now, they don't make them inside of hospitals or anywhere where you can put change in. They only want cards. See, they're trying to block you already, because who told them this info? Why would you in your right mind lose gazillions of bucks daily when lots of people don't use these still to this date? All kinds of cash is used every second. Like, half the people in the lineup when I go for coffee, they're using change. So the thing is that in certain countries, this is way still less used. And there's a lot of people like me that wouldn't, if Barron Trump told me tomorrow I got to get chipped, I'd tell him, you know, like, yeah, right? Like, so I'd disappear in the woods and that'd be the end of it, right? Because you're not going to do that sort of thing. I don't believe that any human being should have to be that sort of stuff, right? So, but anyways, these things are probably coming, right? And it's going to be hard to maneuver through the system. But anyways, you got to give this guy credit. What an entrance, what a scene. I think he's brilliant. I think he could be a great help to society if he wanted to be, but he also could be the greatest damage out there, because with power you need wisdom, but this guy seems to have it. So I don't know what his whole agenda is at the end of the day, but this guy is trippy. So anyway, we'll continue on here, but he's absolutely fascinating. I must admit, and I find what this, all these things, these predictions, locusts, this, that, and all these things, all of this fits in with this AI robot stuff. This Elon Musk and these other guys could be all a puppet, including our friend here, Mr. Barron, sort of thing like that, that are all being run by the Owl Monster Gang of Bohemian Grove, possibly, or one of those, right? Like some kind of, there's always a guy in behind the scenes, right? Like, so you're going to use a front man. This guy is the best front man they could ever, because for me to be impressed with him, I'm a critic of any kinds of the most brilliant people on earth. I still will argue about Einstein, for instance. I say he was one of the most naive and non-intelligent human beings in some ways on this entire planet, because nobody in the right mind, even if 10 trillion guns were shot at me, even if, you know what I mean, all the Satanists wanted to throw you in the lake of fire, whatever, wouldn't matter. There is no way that I would give them this information of how to blow up the world and make nuclear-like stuff here, this atomic crap that he came up with, right? I mean, absolute, just for his own ego. So I find this man deplorable, and he was a traitor from Germany originally anyways, right? And that sort of thing like that, so completely deplorable. He had no care that he should have just never done any of this stuff. Yet no way Germany could have ever held the world anyways. It's a silly premise. They couldn't have even lasted a week barely. Because what happens, you have to have all your soldiers spread out, as if a handful could take on, as a, for instance, Mexico. Yeah, you got a gazillion Spanish, right? And that's, like, I mean, you're not going to be able to control that, right? And so these things are silly, like in that sort of way, right? And they always have been. There never should have been a world war, because you can't really hold the whole world, sort of, right? And I mean, I'm surprised, like, I mean, if people had any brains, like as for instance, let's say they said, everybody's got to get chipped tomorrow, you just all ignore these guys. So what? You make a new monetary system in a minute. You just say, "Oh, sorry, you guys are removed of all your power. You're below zero," and then you start like from scratch again, right? A sort of thing like that, where each one has skills. They're making their own sorts of things like that, and you build a new sort of monetary system, right? And that sort of thing like that, because it's only a handful of people. If people were smart, there'd be ways of knocking these guys out in the stock market quite quickly by doing loopholes and tricks that you could bankrupt a lot of these people quite quickly and make them lose a lot of their power, right? And that sort of thing like that. So these guys, like, I mean, it's mind-boggling stuff, but somebody really controls all this from behind the scenes, right? And I don't know if this is going to be this guy that finally reveals himself. He's already here, but this, what this psychic guy says, that this guy's likely in the highest probability already here, and he says that this Barron Trump has something to do with these sorts of times. So this guy, whether it's now or decades later when he's older, I have no idea, but he's extremely impressive. Keep an eye out for him. Watch what he's doing. Watch everything, because he is extremely impressive. I mean, Trudeau is the most non-impressive moron I've ever seen. So fully somebody puts a microphone in his ear and tells him just whatever gibberish comes out of his mouth, right? But he's fully puppeted by billionaires and other people. But I'm not sure about this guy. This guy is different. And he may have these tricks also to be more wise. I wouldn't be surprised. However, he can pull it off better. He certainly is a wise individual in the general sense anyway. So even if somebody's helping him with speeches or whatever, it wouldn't matter. This guy is impressive, and he's got an aura about him, and a lot of people don't want to like him at first and that, but the more they hear of his wisdom and the way he speaks, the more they're impressed with him and at least willing to now listen, right? And he's got that aura like his dad does. He's got an unusual look of confidence and everything. Everything about this guy tells me this kind of stuff. So anyways, I couldn't agree more, and I think it's very fascinating. So anyways, we'll continue on, but I got to give him kudos. So I hopefully he isn't the Antichrist guy or some evil dude or whatever, right? And actually is going to do something nice for society and that sort of thing like that. And that he's just part of the chain that eventually is going to happen with these evil minions at the end. But let's hopefully that the guy isn't that way, and that he actually, because he certainly is very intelligent, and he could be of great usefulness on this planet. He has a great aura and charisma about him that I think a lot of people would find appealing to them eventually, even if they don't like him at first. Eventually he'll win them over. So very interesting man. Very few humans on Earth can do such a thing. So I'll give him kudos to that. So Donald did a good job there. Except that I'm scared of the side stuff, right? Like, I don't know which way this guy's going to go, right? Because you can be the wisest king and still go do an evil route, right? Or vice versa, right? So hopefully he I don't know, stays on some kind of at least a path where he can affect humanity in a decent. Here we go, the re-evolution theory. This kind of works with any kind of system, whoever claims to be the correct one, sort of thing, right? So you, even if it's correct that somehow mud can retain information and then eventually became a mud skipper and a coelacanth that crawled up on the land and all of a sudden turned into the fawns eventually, sort of idea. We could either believe that one sort of thing, when even Darwin himself and the other fellow that helped him create with it, right, that sort of thing. Those guys, they even had in there that, this would just be a presumption and they could be completely wrong, right? Sort of thing like this, because you can't really date the age of the animal sort of bone or any of these kinds of things. And just because you find something in a layer that you imagine must be so many millions of years, which you can't actually prove either one of these, right? You can make machines that will certainly say they're 1 million years old, but you're basing it on a theory, and the machine's calculated to do that, so it knows that 1 zillionth of a layer is 1 year or whatever, right? Like this kind of thing, and so it's programmed to do that, right? By smart people that, but really isn't proving anything. You're just stating that this works on this theory, right? Whilst with the other way, we could either believe that over 5,000 cultures just before Darwin, right, and then it started to change a little bit, that all of these previous to that believed in Christian-like or some kind of religious-like values, and believed that mighty beings from the sky, the great father, like the natives, a lot of them will call him, or the great chief, that kind of things, right? Like each one is shown and represented in a different way, right? And that sort of thing like that. But the thing is that all of them, that's not a theory. The scientist guy might say like this, right? Like it's imagination, but it isn't. You have 5,000, over 5,000 cultures for gazillions of years here, since the beginning of time, have told you that mighty beings have came down from the sky and created them in some kind of interpretation, right? Occasionally it's even from underwater or underground, like ant people and things like that, these kinds of things, right? Sort of thing like that. But all of them are these same idea that some alien-like to God-like entity has came down, created us somehow, sort of thing like that. That's not a theory. These are people telling you with their own eyes that they've seen these things, right, throughout the centuries and the thousands of years here, right? The Bible, as a for instance, is, like I said, I'm below zero qualified to be a preacher, sort of thing, right? But the thing is that I am very knowledgeable about ancient history, the Bible, and many, many strange sorts of things, right? So I do know that this Bible is insanely accurate. Every time people make statements saying that, oh, it couldn't be, there was no such place as Bethlehem, of course it exists. Right? All these I listened to since the 60s as a kid, and every single time these stories end up being correct. As a, for instance, the newest one, Sodom and Gomorrah. Who would believe that, fire and brimstones flying from the sky and all that sort of things like that? Well, it's 100% a true story. Not only have they found the cities, but they even have a strange pillar there that could be the size of a human being, this Lot's wife part of it, okay? A pillar of salt. However, there's gazillions of balls only around these two cities, nowhere else, and they're the only ones. I don't know of any historical records. I've heard of strange things where meteorites cause fire from the skies and different things, but this is very specific where they're hail balls, right? And they actually, even whoever did this made it so perfect that it only went around the two circumferences of the city. They don't find them out after a certain thing. So even though you can't prove that the God guy actually said that, again, the Bible is correct in the sense that truly the event happened. And this is why I get so mad at all kinds of these critics and space alien guys and different ones with some of the sort of things that they say that, dragons didn't exist, it was imagination, or they were a UFO. Sometimes they were a UFO, but not because the peasant person thought that a UFO was a dragon. They simply, again, like they use flying shields, flying chariots, burning bushes, blah, blah, like 10 zillion of these, right? And ancient sort of things, silvery discs, flying stars, all these wacky sort of ones, right? Because that when the person's trying to tell that to their next buddy what they saw, right, they got to give some kind of idea of something that would mimic it, seemingly, right? So when the chariot goes up in the sky, the only form of transportation they had was a chariot of horses, right? So of course you would use sort of a reference like that, sort of thing like that, right? So, but what upsets me about it is that they deny these stories in there. I mean, and so these scientist guys claiming that dragons didn't exist and they were mythology is the silliest thing in this universe. Still is in a few museums around the world real dragons, even though they haven't been proven to be real. In all reality, they seemingly are real specimens of ones. Okay, there's one in Japan. It's a very well recorded story. It's been there since the 11th century, folks. 11th century, man. It's the oldest museum, pretty well known in the world that I know of, anyways, right? But anyways, I would do anything in this world to go to this place and see this, right? Because I mean, I know that they existed, right? Because when you go through everybody from King Henry VIII to King Edward to 10 zillion people from every country on the planet, and the guy's got governmental records stating that they had people to breed a dragon, or some had them as pets and these kinds of things, or would use them for medicine, what parts they're all using and everything, with the cost of their feed listed and everything. And you really, really believe that these people would do this for something to do? This is the most silliest thing. You can't find anywhere in recorded history, in every encyclopedia and dictionary, everywhere from the 1940s and below, they said dragons were real, however getting rare. They were mentioning this even in the 14th century, that they were getting less, right? So because people needed these parts and things like that, and when a warring factions would go back and forth, right, they would then the dragons, once you took over the spot, some people were nuts and they didn't keep animals, so they would kill them as a sort of a thing, and they were used in colosseums in early ancient Roman and Greek times. There's many mentions of these. There's even housing seemingly that only could fit Titanic-sized dinosaur-like animals, right? And we'll be talking about this in a second. But the thing is that truly, when they would use only real animals that every person knows, that's why the guy would say he flew like a gleaming dragon, They clearly know it's a spaceship, but they're trying to give you an idea of some sort of thing, right? And that. So here's the basic idea of it, is that this Yahweh guy will use this as a version, but it doesn't matter. Like I said, if you want to believe that it was Vishnu or this one or Allah or whatever, right? Like all these kinds of ones, at the end of the day, this still fits correctly that whoever the creator's real name is, but I choose to believe, because the Bible is so accurate, that it seems that in all a zillion % probability that this Yahweh guy is the boss of all gods. Right? And there is other gods below them, other space alien like sort of people that humans are interpreting and calling gods, that really they are gods in the sense that, yes, they created us, they help advance us, and we're like an experiment. They monitor us 24 hours a day. That's why it says that you'll be put in this Lamb's Book of Life, which is really some kind of giant computer-like database, right? And that sort of thing like that. And what happens is we were created to as a sort of life experiment on this sort of planet, right? And when the guy says he created the heavens and the earth, right? Heavens actually in ancient translations means a place to live. So as far as you know, that could be inside of a giant spaceship he built, some other planets that he's now put life on it and building this beautiful heaven-like place where there won't be any bad sorts of things and all that sort of thing, right? And the experiment is that the people are willing to listen to these set of rules that he said, right? And these kinds of things like that, you'll be then, brought to this next sort of experiment the next time over, right? Like sort of thing after. So any one of us that would, let's say this version was right, there's this rapture thing and all these other sort of things. We're now deemed worthy enough to continue the experiment because these guys, people are getting this wrong. This is what I fully believe. It says that God created the heavens and the earth, and these people imagine that this guy, there was nothing out there. He's just floating in the clouds, and he decided to go poop in all these planets here. This is ludicrous sort of stuff to me in a lot of ways, right? Like, so here's what I really believe. It says that this guy, one day of the earth is like 1,000 years to the Lord. So I believe that somewhere out there, however the Lord was created, right? That doesn't matter. I don't know these things. I almost don't want to know, right? Like sort of thing, like because this is so ancient stuff. It would take you 1 trillion years here to even learn all this ancient history of how this would have occurred, right? But what I believe, because this is slow life and these sorts of things, the guy says he created in 6 days and rest on the seventh. So 6,000 years in his time zone, he put life on this planet, right? And sort of thing. And that's the thing is because it's 6,000 years in his time zone. Clearly, this guy likes to listen to others' advices because it said that Ezekiel said that when he's brought inside this giant great ship, right? He sees the mighty ones. He's on the throne. He's got the big chair like every boss does, right? And he's got this group of advisors and then these guardian angels around him and cherubs and other things up there, right? And that sort of thing, right? So obviously it says the Lord can be found always amongst the mountaintops. Get it? Flying saucer. He's hovering over there. Conveniently, some of these tops where they said that God would come down and visit, they're actually flat. There's weird things that scientists can't explain, like as if it was meant to, where the big guy's up in some super ship, and then sometimes if he decides to visit himself personal, right, now he lands with the smaller ship and also his representative guardians, whatever you want to call them, sons of gods, and all these different ones that use this sorts of methodology, right? So, and it says that the angels fly in chariots, right? And the Lord is amongst them. Right? Like, so he's in a bigger chariot, right? This is what Ezekiel saw, the big mama ship, right? Sort of idea, right? So the idea is that he decided to do this as an experiment because if these guys don't age, right, and he's the boss, like the major guy that's been there, the king of all the bosses of the universe, right, of these different life forms that may be out there, right, this guy might have been able to even collect these, like samples of the different life forms out there, and somehow they make like a code, right, and mimic it. And then sort of this is, you're creating like what humans do today with this cloning and all this kind of weird stuff. Some kind of thing like that, because the guy says let us make them in our own image. Okay, so R meaning more than one. That means that there could be blondies, brunettes, redheads, and all these sorts of things that we see in our sort of host bodies. But I suspect that the energy, the superpower, is what we're looking at here, these fiery angels and all this sort of thing like that, where he says a lot of times that this human body is like a host, right? And maybe that's how it was made, like they mentioning muds in a rib and these weird things. It could be some kind of wacky sort of thing that you would make, right? That would make this living computer-like body that would have a genetic code in it to be able to host these spirit-like sort of things that each one is really what's running our minds and everything. So it's really, we're like one of these spirit like things seemingly, and that is the energy that is running your body, and maybe they can only stay there so long or whatever, right? And then they got to go into either a new host that's young again or whatever, right? This reincarnation sort of idea. But the idea is that the scientist guy believes that you all of a sudden we showed up in a cave, 100,000 to 25 million years ago, depending on who you're listening to, and then we went ooh 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 and scratched our backside, and then we saw the first girl, and we said ooh ooh ooh, what should we do with her? And all of a sudden we had children and this kinds of stuff, right? This is all gobbledygook. There's no way an advanced race that what I'm saying is that could you imagine 6 days of his time is 6,000 years to us? So let's say even, I don't know, like seven, no, here we'll pick something like 1,000 days. Okay, so 1,000 days, right, would be almost near 3 years, right? Right, would be like it would be what would I think that'd be a billion. So that'd be like a billion years in their time. So if these guys don't die for some reason in this really slow time zones and all that, and maybe the ships are designed the same way to sort of keep you at this level, right, and that sort of thing like that, could you imagine the advancements that would have occurred on their original planet, wherever that might be, right? And that sort of thing, like wherever his major home was originally, I doubt was the spaceship. That's where his like where he hangs out now. But I mean, he may have like some kind of home planet that he started on, right? I suspect that all these planets were here. This mighty race through this ancient, because of the time zone, somehow evolved into this mighty beings, right? And simply that they made us as an experiment in their own image, and in their own image could be many things. There could be like a lizard like God guy, and one that's a cutie pie like this blondie hair, and this sort of like, you see what I mean? Like you could have these different sorts of variations that it isn't clear about any of these things, right? Like a lot of people say, no, there's only one God, right? That's not true at all. The guy never tells you that. He says, thou shalt be no other gods before me. But he clearly mentions even people praying to minions and all kinds of things, and fully acknowledges like who would be the sons of God. How did he have them? Right? And that sort of thing. Some people think they're angels. I really doubt this massively, because then if he says if it's in our own image, well, the angels he created separately to be helpers in that. Also, I find it odd that if Lucifer and some of them were angels, right? Well, then why is it that they had the free will to do all these things, while with a lot of people keep saying that an angel has to sort of obey the mighty one, right? Like that they don't seem to have a free will. I kind of suspect this is not the case. There might have been some ancient mistranslations or whatever. It could be that he did help create them. They could be like a super AI living like computer of some sort, right? Like sort of great mighty entities, right, of some sort. But it sounds like as if they're different from him, right? Like he's the almighty powerful one, right? Sort of the idea, right? But that somehow, like, I don't know, whatever way you want to say this, like a much more incredible life form, where instead of an AI robot, you're like, I don't know, like some kind of, you actually created life here, where it's like an evolution like thing, right? That you made them a certain way, right? To help you out in that. But it seems like, I mean, there's this angel battle in the heavens, right? When they try to overthrow God and all these sorts of ones. It seems that they do have their own free will, right? And that sort of thing like that. So it's interesting, right? And that sort of thing like that. So there could be some misinterpretations with some of these things. But nevertheless, that's why you find people that are darker, lighter, everything, all these kinds of things. We were born with a blank hard drives, all of us, from plants, trees, every creature that was ever put on this earth at the beginning. The ones that were all put on this earth became gazillions of new ones later. It was just a base formula. This is what is certain, and that's why Noah had only a certain amount of animal groups, which all branch off to almost everything going out there. You can a certain only amount of family trees exist, right, and that sort of thing like that. So what these host bodies that they somehow create, right, and that sort of thing like that, have a living like blank hard drive in you, and it's designed to do anything. So in other words, if a bunch of people are in a city and the blank hard drive guy comes from out of the jungle, but he's still young and is working correctly, well, then he can learn pieces of information and may actually be able to retain it just as much like an Albert Einstein sort of guy. So the idea is instead of that we came from a chip man to anything, we simply were created at the beginning. We had these guardians, these Anunnaki guys, and all these different ones, right? Sort of angels, whichever ones you want to call them, right? And they taught us early sorts of things like that. And because we were only small numbers at first, right? Eventually the city got too big. You cleared out the animals, which were AKA these dinosaurs at these times, right? All of these things were spread across the world, but it's 6,000 years. And he said, I believe that the animals are first. And then finally man came along, right? So if that's the case, it could be that there was this mist on the earth, right? And early humans and animals apparently could live mass hundreds of years. There's Methuselah over 900. That's the oldest known one, but who knows? There's other ancient stories from other cultures that claim even older sorts of ones, right? So let's say that this is really true, that this mist was so thick that it covered the free radicals, and this mighty Yahweh guy, we'll use that version, made it that way on purpose because there's only a small amount of humans at first, right? And they got to keep procreating, and then you also have to factor in that the odd one's going to be eaten by a pterodactyl monster and all these wacky sort of things. So they were, when the animals were first put to start pilling, and then finally they put man, right? Now man's there. It doesn't take man long because he put them in charge of all the other animals. He tells you this, right? So he made us the most adaptable of all, right? And that sort of thing like that. So in our chain, if we're chased out in the woods and we have to live in a woods environment, we're going to go to the woods environment, and naturally our body's going to become more furry, darker or lighter to suit conditions and things like that. So all these Neanderthal man, chip man, all this stuff, all is around always at the same time from the beginning of time to now, and we're going to be covering that sort of things, and that these angels actually really do exist. Here's one here. I interviewed the Muslim family. They all recognized it right away. They said that's what they saw. There's giant red sort of flashing lights you can see covering the city, and this is how big this mighty Lord spaceship may possibly be, like, I don't know, like miles across possibly, whatever. And nobody noticed that. A lot of the films don't show this, but this particular one does, right? This angel comes flying zoop like a zillion miles an hour, lands right there exactly thousands of years before an angel went to the same place and caused some wild stuff going on, right? And that sort of thing. We won't get into that particular story, but what's interesting is these space alien guys, which I love them all, right? Like I said, and that sort of thing. But all of them, when they watch these films, they try and totally ignore that could be an angel. I mean, how silly. Come on, guys. I mean, you're historians too, right? Sort of thing like that. You can't ignore that. What would be the odds that another space alien's going to just happen to float over the same tower area? Come on. I mean, so this angel stops on a dime. Totally impossible. No drone on Earth can go these fast. None of these things. Then you see wings come right out of his back, and the silly scientists said that they would melt and fall down and all this. All foolishness. These are a spirit-like, the closest word I could use. I kind of to give you an idea again, like what a primitive person would have thousands of years ago, a flying disc, right? That sort of thing. The wings actually come out when they want them to, and they go right back in when they want them to. The reason the angel used the wings here stops right in a dime, totally impossible. Nobody could go at this speed. They would be like the atmosphere and all this. This is insane stuff, like way past any ships or anything that we are known to have. And then this thing's gliding there. There's no helicopter blades holding it or anything, right? So now he, or maybe possibly it's a cherub. I don't know this. It could be a cutie pie like that. I hope so. Sort of thing like that. So, but now the angel shoots out these two power beams and shoots it right at a location where these Jewish are supposed to rebuild the temple, and that's when the last days and all this big stuff going on. This psychic guy had to put on an earlier show. It's not on anymore, but I'm sure somebody has watched it, and he said that there was going to be these two golden rows for Trump, but he didn't understand that, like as if Trump was sick or something. He wasn't there for a while and then came back, so he didn't understand the vision. And so what happened, of course, is Biden got in, and then now Trump again, right? But he said that this Barron guy, the Trump son, may be around the times of I don't know, like either he's going to have some kind of political clout of some sort himself or whatever, and this Donald in the second run, a lot of strange things are going to start happening to us of all sorts of bizarre things like that. And then he says that whenever that this temples built and all these kinds of things, that it is true, and seemingly that, and he thinks that these monsters that they describe in the Bible that are seemingly indestructible and they're going to cause great pain and nobody can die, sort of, and all this sort of thing. It could be that these are these AI robots, sort of things, right? Because this has already happened in Japan. There was a case where a bunch of robots went nuts and killed everything, right? And it's saying that you can't really kill them. Like, that could be a translation thing in the sense that because they're not really human, sort of thing, you're not able to kill them in the general sense because they can repair them quick and get them back up moving, right? Sort of idea, right? Like, I guess, like something like that. I could see that, right? And that sort of thing like that, right? And that. So, then this mighty being shoots right back up in the skies. You see these red lights vanish, and it's all gone, right? And over 10,000 witnesses, hundreds of films from different individuals. Some are grubby, where all you see is like a circle, sort of ball, like you don't see some of these things, but some of them have some real good ones, right? So this is 100% legitimate, but I find it strange that the alien guys will always say, is that a space alien and that, and try and pretend like as if they don't know that historically speaking, these people, everybody there believed it was an angel. Nobody's questioning it whatsoever, right? And that news report said it was an angel. I mean, any person shouldn't be denying that the odds are that truly these mighty beings really do exist, because that is right in front of you, a real film of something totally unexplainable that fits all the descriptions of these glowing beings. They got wings. Maybe when they can look like humans, maybe they actually inhabit some other human. Walk up to people, maybe are glowing so they actually know that maybe it is an angel inside them or whatever. The person doesn't remember any of this. They work through them possibly, right? And that tell the person they need to tell whatever it is they got to do, and then they zap up in their normal body like this and go back into the mighty spaceship someplace, right? Sort of idea like this. And that they've been helping us out since time began. Right now, maybe possibly some few leaders or people out there might possibly actually have still dealings with these entities, right? But in general, this guy's going to come here and this sort of thing like that. We were an experiment. We've been monitored for massive... You could find these probes mentioned thousands of years ago in Japanese and Asian records. Again, they deny these things, yet they tell tell you that these aliens came down, and they would even do trade with them in earliest times, right? So the thing is that all the ancient alien people and all these other ones, they all say, it's not God, it's a space alien. This is the same thing. Humans have been interpreting anybody from the sky, which really is a god. It's the same thing, because when somebody comes from the sky, they've told you that they created you, right? They provide you a set of rules, right? And ask you to do certain things, and if you want to continue on with the experiment with them and have forever lasting life, because in these time zones it will be like that, right? So that's what they're telling you, and of course they're also disgusted and are also probably get mass comedy out of humans, because they wouldn't remember likely what their earliest time was, right? Like, and this guy, this mighty Yahweh guy, he says, I'm nondescript, you can't, put a pin down on him, and all that kind of thing. Like this guy, because he's so intelligent and so much wisdom from being around for a zillion years, right? This guy's seen everything moving, right? So, of course, he doesn't like primitive sort of behavior, unless occasionally he finds some of it comical, right? And that sort of thing like that. But in general, he gives you these rules, right? But he knows that humans are going to break them, and then when he had his son, he decided, instead of having these Nephilim-like children, where he was mad at his sons of God and all these sorts of characters, right? That he was mad at them because simply that these guys, we were supposed to be an experiment, and that we were supposed to be an experiment, and that they, because they're these great mighty beings and the sons of God and this sort of thing like that, they took advantage of these primitive blank hard drive mortals, right? So then they taught them things. All these blank hard drives that we all have, whether the guy's a chipman in a cave to a guy on Wall Street, is all depends on our environment and how much information we can collect, right, at certain points of time, right? Sort of thing like this. So you'll see this, but clearly this is the case, that humans interpret things by saying, like in modern times here, you got Prince Charles. I wouldn't doubt if it's Trudeau too, because I know in some mosques they have him inside of there, and they got a big picture of him, and they call him the Great Najaji. Right? So he was apparently some character that convinced forced Africa to turn pretty well nearly all Islam, all within a day, because two characters approached him and said Islam is the way. Like, I mean, how weak-minded of a human being are you? Like, nothing to do with Islam. It wouldn't matter. It could be Christian. It could be the Darwin guy preaching you. I mean, come on. Like, as if you take over your whole country in a minute and sell them out for just because two banana heads come along and start pitching you something, right? Like, I mean, you got to investigate it first, right? So then if you really fully believe that, still even at that, your subjects should have a right to worship things that they wanted, right? Like, so I mean, I find these things really bizarre, right? But whatever the case, right, the thing is that so in each case here, you have humans saying that they're a god, right? These army guys came back from the war there, and they landed on these islands, and ever since there, these natives make these planes and helicopter-looking things, and they pray to it, right? So fully, we did that, right? Not the mighty Yahweh guy, in the sense that, yes, in this particular case, he is the boss of all this sort of things, right? He created us with some kind of computer-like code that we can branch only out to certain degrees in that family. So God doesn't want to probably, I can't speak for him, but let's say I doubt that God wants to be, I don't know, a moose later or something, right? Like unless he felt like it for entertainment value, right? Like, but the thing is that he only allows like a certain amount of like a chain, right? So we can become thousands of different kinds of what the scientist guy would call a different sort of human. We could get way bigger, way shorter, more hairier, less furrier, and all kinds of things, right? Because in our own image, right? Maybe the God guy's, I don't know, we'll say he's a blonde guy, right? So then sort of thing like this, and then there's a brunette and a raven and all these different ones, right? That these sons of gods maybe had different colors of hair, as far as you know, or any of these kinds of things. They then, these things are all built into us, these different sort of donations from the different sort of mighty ones here that are creating, right? So the thing is that, and they can be lost for quite some time and reappear, and we'll be talking about that and that sort of thing like that. So basically how it's going to work is simply like this. The modern man here, the scientist guy believes that Trudeau's a modern man, right? So he's just came out of the bar there, he's clean shaven, he's got his Labatt 50 with him. He's got a big reefer of Red Columbia in his side pocket, that sort of stuff, and he's dreaming up some scheme to get more cash or that sort of thing like that. So now the posse finds out that he schemed 10 billion after he retired, and they start chasing him, right? So now, a week later, you can see here that now he's hidden in the Quebec wilderness, right, in one of his properties that he has out there, and he's got cash and lots of Labatt Segal and lots of Red Colombian and the important things, right? And he's got a couple of ladies there and that sort of thing like that. So already within a week, he's getting older, more mature looking, more cavemanish by the minute. You can see the gray, and he's getting way more furry, right? And the eyebrows and everything else. He's turning into a Sasquatch quite quickly, right? Sort of thing like that. So now he has some children with the ladies, right? And a couple of them happen to have, let's say, a dwarfism or something, right? And that sort of thing like that. And that they, by a rare occurrence, they get hypertrichosis, right? Well, that sort of thing like that. Well, then it's quite feasible that in no time at all, you could become here like this unknown tribe here in the Amazon. Our buddy here, the chimp family, right? so I love this stuff. Like, look at the perplexed look. So can you imagine was in 2024 that these ancient little human guys here, right, that actually could occur from just children of Trudeau's, right? This is quite feasible. And there's been wild people for massive, over 1,000 cases recorded through history, and really well recorded, where they were raised from strange things, from deer to a moose, wolves, bears, and a Sasquatch, like other sorts of ones, and all kinds of wacky stuff, right? So the idea is that this guy never ran across us ever, and nor did this Uber delivery guy here, a modern guy, run across him yet. You can clearly see both of these can exist at the same time and all that. So can you imagine now that if all of a sudden an earthquake happened upon the poor guys right here, and it flipped over a bunch, and then a volcano came and buried them down deep in some layer, right? And some of this, I don't know, Precambrian rock went over the top of them, right? And it crushed it all down, flattened. A scientist guy 500 years from now would find this someday, and he immediately would say that somehow that, you know what I mean, this is where the evolvement happened, the missing link, that this chimp people here, you know what I mean, had evolved and went into this guy because they were both at the same, you know, Jurassic layer, right? Sort of idea, right? So that's what he'd believe, right? But clearly you can see here that right away that there's, now these people can't be this silly because they have wrappings around their areas, right? Sort of stuff like this. But clearly, like, fully more like an apish sort of, like, you know, a half and half human, half apish sort of thing. No, this is not kids in suits. It's impossible. Nobody has those thins of arms. The parents would be almost in jail, for the teachers would suspect that the child's being starved to death. It can even has hugely ambidextrous sorts of features, sort of things to it. Look at how it's twisting its legs there and that, and the micro little muscles, and how strange that it is, right? It's not a human in a suit. It's impossible. So this is actually some branch off of us that has been floating around for God knows hundreds to thousands of years, who knows, right? Sort of thing like that, right? And they're always amongst us, because it doesn't take that long from a modern man can revert to these chimp man, and the chimp man can revert to the modern man much more quicker than you possibly believe. And we'll see this here and that sort of stuff. So next we're going to cover this Bigfoot tribe here. And I'll continue on with that in a minute. But a man named Edward in the early 1900s, he had cataloged over 80 American tribes for the government, okay? And one of them almost no contact with humans to this date, and were said to live in caves, okay? And underground tunnels, and in the forest, and shun people, okay? So exactly what I've been telling you is all along, there's these giant boulders all over through the U.S., 5 billion, valleys full of these things. Some of these got underground caving systems underneath the tunnels, and these Sasquatch are being told either by the space alien god guy to avoid us, sort of thing like that, where they give them a sort of idea, right? Or that they just naturally know these things, again, because it's a primitive blank hard drive at first, and depending on how many of you that there is and that, you're going to teach each other little more things. In a city, it becomes more and more advanced by the minute, because one lady, she knows how to sew. Another lady, she's strict, and she knows how to discipline the bottom, right? Sort of whatever the case, right? Like you would have an expert at all kinds of sort of ones, right? Sort of thing. So then they would teach this to the other ones. So the blank hard drive has a much more ability to start becoming quite advanced quite quickly. But if they're born with any strange sorts of things, in ancient times people were more superstitious in a lot of ways, because they all believed in a godlike entity again, right? And that sort of thing like this. So here we're going to look at this tribe and clearly show you that if any of these guys ended up getting hypertrichosis, right, and the strength of them and the look of them and that, these guys clearly could be some of these giant Sasquatch variety, and the certain ones that we've been seeing all this time, and even the other native tribes never see these guys. Very few know of their existence, right? And they're hiding all throughout the West, still right up to this date here. So look at this. I mean, this is crazy stuff here. Now look at this guy compared to the Patterson, or a typical chimp-like sort of guy, right? Right? Like, look at the sort of thing, the wide lips. All these people were covered with stuff because they didn't want them to. So they're way more furry than what you think, except this lady's a little bit lesser on her face and that sort of thing. So these guys always live out in the woods, but yet look at how intelligent they are. You can see here she killed some creature, I guess, of some sort. You can see a big fang tooth. Maybe it's a werewolf. Who knows, right? Sort of thing like that. But beautiful beading work, right? So what are you saying? She's some dodo head? I don't think so. So, and this, look at here, our buddy Mr. Chimpman, right? And this guy, right? Look at this. He's made a silver medallion of some sort, and he's got this beautiful, amazing necklace here that he's made, right, of some sort. So this guy's intelligent, where they have even ability to make metal-like objects with such skill. I find this amazing, right? So that sort of thing like that. So the thing is that here, if you saw these guys out in the bush and they were a bit more furry, the face here, right? And as far as I know, maybe even this person did something with them to get these photos, right? Like, so they might have agreed to get a shave even, possibly, right? But the thing is that these tribes exist out there, right? So can you imagine now here, like this guy here, okay? So these guys here may have been actual offspring of where Sasquatch seduced a regular sort of, 9 to 5 girl from a town, right? And that some of these would come out like this, right? Where they're furry enough to survive the early childhood birth and stuff and is still taken care of by the mother or parent, right? Sort of thing. As in this, for instance, this lady got attacked by a giant Sasquatch-like creature that dragged her back to a cave, seduced her, made her have a child with her, and that. She finally escaped after she fed the child for a while, for a certain length of time, and told everybody about it. But they couldn't sort of, nobody really, like, they just sort of ignored it, right? Sort of idea. So finally, this guy, there was no places to hide around there. So finally, these people saw him, and then they remembered the story and everything. This was her son. Her son's 7 foot something, completely a Sasquatcher, except he inherited some of her more modern, like, sort of things where the hair is not needed as much in buildings and this sort of thing, and this happens quite quickly. So here, this guy, the father must have been a bigger, even Bigfoot guy from the description of him. So he was a real wild man, where he might have even looked more like a typical Sasquatch, right? This guy here, just like advanced Neanderthal version of Trudeau, where he's advancing the missing link, right? He knows how to smoke pot, and so does this guy, right? So he's not that unintelligent and that sort of thing like that, but he had way longer arms and legs than any human being on Earth and sort of thing like this. So this guy's in modern times, but if some scientist found this guy in some wacko layer from a volcano or anything, he guaranteed he would see he was the missing link and all this phony baloney, right? So now here's the next one, right? So in this case, this lady was raped by this Urad, right? Dragged up into some cave-like area. These villagers were looking for her and helped her. Actually, she escaped by a bit of luck and that. And she told them all this, and they all knew this, right? And that. So she didn't even have the child yet. So how are you supposed to know then? Like this story here, the lady said it, right? Like, the lady said it because she escaped and they didn't find this guy until way later, but obviously her story was true, and obviously this child really existed, right? Sort of thing like this. But in this case, she hadn't had the baby yet, right? And everybody in the village knew this, right? So why is it again then that this guy comes out like a Sasquatch? He's 7 foot something on the world's longest, like, arms and legs, way more than what should be for any human being, and that sort of thing like that, right? And that he has patches of fur on his back and stuff that you don't see in this photo, but he just inhabited more of the Asian like thing, but also like a monkey ponket face and a more crest like a Sasquatch, right? So sort of thing. So this guy, they because the same thing, the mother really tried to help him as best, but he was this guy wasn't that intelligent, so they weren't able to, or either that or the mother was so embarrassed she never dealt with him much. Like, who knows, right? Any kind of thing like that. But I mean, they were able to teach this guy small tasks and things like that, right? So I mean, these are modern guys, both here, fully what. If they were more covered with hair, this guy would be a Sasquatch that we would see out in the woods. And if either of these guys had some children, quite often there's dwarfism and different things like that. You could get variations like this, and yet clearly all of these sorts can survive here all the time. So these ancient giants, when they escaped the flood, after the Noah sort of thing like this, right, they or any ones that off branch from Noah's group and sort of things like that, all these kinds can exist quite quickly. And when you had children born with hypertrichosis or looking freaky in the village or anything bad about them, they would then, of course, use this sort of thing by getting rid of these children, either outright killing them, throwing them out in the woods, and sometimes they got lucky, and other feral ones that were thrown out that were a bit older that survived it, right, picked them up, and they lived in the caves. All kinds of ancient philosophers mentioned lycanthropy. People will be talking about that in a second and showing you examples and things like that. But clearly here you can see, like I said, that this chimp person here is totally perplexed and showing that all of these things can occur all the time back and forth, right? Because the blank hard drive here, this the chimp lady and guy, right? They only need to know in their environment information that's pertinent to them, right? So when the scientist guy says that it's primitive, it isn't primitive. It's actually just logical information for what's retained. There's no use teaching the chimp man how to do integrated calculus in an area like this when the chimp man needs to know what plants to eat, which ones not to, where to get water, and the resources, right? And these mighty beings watch us and they want to see every variation that comes out in all kinds of living environments. Same with plants. The plant can look more primitive or more advanced to you in our imagination, but simply it's to fit the environment. It's always the best advanced thing for the plant at that particular area and place. Same with humans. Sometimes we're going to look more Neanderthal, be more bigger macho. In other areas like the Atacama Desert, this isn't suitable. We'll be pegged off too easy. But being a little munchkin guy living in tiny underground caves with little weapons and stuff, you can survive and sneak out at night and stuff like that if you got to hunt, right? and not be seen well, right? So these kinds of ideas. So there's all kinds of forms of humans, and this is one of them, is these gigantopithecus looking sort of things that can actually happen up and down quite quickly, right? So again here, like let's say the posse's after Trudeau, they discovered him and Omer got 10 billion in a cave, and they've been secretly, they each got 4 wives they bought out in the Quebec wilderness, sort of thing like that. So, and that sort of thing like that. So they've escaped, and you can clearly see within a week, I mean, again, Trudeau's becoming much more primitive looking by the second. Omar's even way more furry, right? So let's say each of them have 4 children each or 5 children each. So 5 children each, right? Well, the odds could be that some of them might, by fluke, get this hypertrichosis sort of thing like this in the new environment, and they're taking showers less and all this. The body is naturally built to quite often do this. You had the case of Maria LeBlanc. When they found her, she was fully like a hypertrichosis person, yet when they shaved her down, she didn't regrow the hair the same like a regular hypertrichosis would, and was a very pretty girl, and actually was married off, I believe, and taught high culture. So even though she was super strong when she was first found, totally wild and fully covered, naked, and hair were fully covered, right? So is it feasible that this Yahweh sometimes wants the child to survive, gives them the blast to grow some more hair peaceably, or that just by luck that the body can learn that quickly that hey, it needs the hair, but if once often removed or whatever, it then reverted back to more regular growth. Something like that, right? But that's the kind of idea, and it can happen in every kind of creature and animal here. Here's ancient cases proving this all across, right? Where children thus are born, hairy coats, heaven's wrath upon the kingdom. That's what they believe. So if it was a king or queen's son, daughter, like a lot of times they're either, because they're rich, they might have hired a nanny and raised the child out in the woods and just then finally got rid of them, sort of told them that you're going to have to hide out here in the woods, right? So that the lady, she finds some poor a delivery boy, right? And she jumps him, right? And that sort of thing like that. All of a sudden now, she's got a whole family here of werewolf-like sort of ones here. Now look at this guy here. Can you imagine if Linda Moulton Howell? I loved her, fantastic researcher. I talked to her once and gave her a couple of werewolf stories, and I thought she was cute as heck and a really nice lady. And I mean, I would have loved to have done some research with her and go to the Spray Road sort of thing, right? But could you imagine, let's say her and Giorgio or something were out there doing the show, right? And this guy didn't have the hat, which I love his hat, is fantastic. But let's say he didn't have the hat and he didn't have this clothing on, right? Look at his feet here. They're perfectly like a werewolf's. They're super long, right? Fully a werewolf, hairy legs here, the whole do, right? If you saw anybody, and remember, these guys are cultured, so they were raised in the more lazy way, where they actually might have had a fridge or any of these kinds of things, right? Of early times, right? And that's what they had some teachings, right? Like somebody was teaching them how to clothe themselves and all these kinds of things, right? And as far as you know, they might have been very highly cultured, right? Certain thing like that. I mean, the hat's fantastic, right? So probably these people had a few bucks, who knows, right? But anyways, the idea is that if poor Linda, if she had to see that. And Giorgio, let's say, and they saw him in the woods where there's a group, this family here, and remember, they would be way stronger in this berry-ridden environment where they're eating natural sort of stuff, and they got to work much more harder for their food. Well, this werewolf guy's going to be even more macho and more like a typical Sasquatch, a little bit more wider and bigger, right? Sort of thing like this. Or my favorite skeptic of all time, she doesn't believe I exist. Joe Nichols, nobody out there that are non-furry. She doesn't believe in non-furry people. So, so this is Jolene Nichols here, and I mean, you can clearly see that. I mean, she was very highly cultured and extremely intelligent, and I don't blame her. I'm kind of skeptical that the Joe Nichols are out there, sort of thing like that. But you can see whole families of them, right? So the idea would be like Socrates and different ones in ancient times would say that there was these lycanthrope people and that they would hide out in the caves and that. So these guys are a presumption that we can't, that a chimp man, because the person's hairy, right, is from ancient times, or that they're a caveman and that. In these cases here, these people were all cultured, right, because rarely the parents decided to not throw them out in the woods, right? But a lot of people would have been, and they also would become way stronger if they were able to survive it, right? So that's sort of the idea. So the idea too is like look at this guy here, John Travolta. Stole off of him the Staying Alive there. Like I always told you, everything's always been done before. So he'd make a great new recovery of the Staying Alive, sort of do the whole movie again, except it's a werewolf guy. So you can see him doing the pose here. But can you imagine, look at how furry his chest is and all this sort of face, sort of thing like this, right? Imagine this guy out in the woods. Right, and Linda saw him out in Bray Road, right, or something like that. 1,000,000%, every person would believe they really truly saw a werewolf. Or here, JoJo, look at even the pointy ears, right? So what I'm stating to you is, when you have groups of families living in caves and they actually learn to survive, they passed on the information as blank hard drive to teach on to their next of kin. The next of kin has a bunch of children, but only 2 out of the group ended up having still this hypertrichosis gene, and sadly the other ones were born fully non-hairy, right, which could occur. Well, then those poor ones might have died, right, and not likely as much survived, sort of thing. So the idea is that no matter what, you can continue having ancient tribes like this. Some are going to become more powerful and bigger because of the mountains, and that you find this in Alaska and every place that the animals are way bigger. So the macho Sasquatch like version of 10, 12 feet tall. These kinds are the most ancient kinds that have been living more isolated sort of things. They're the big boss ones where the only ones that are going to survive typically are the ones with this gene, and there's just enough of them out there because it's so many zillion caves, and this happened so long ago in certain areas for thousands of years that people have been chucked out of villages to all kinds of things like that. Some of them end up being groups like that, right? Or this werewolf variety of this, or this poor chip lady here, right? Like sort of thing, right? So I mean, this is the idea, right? Like at this, people believed this even a long time ago, where these the last cavemen, right? That all kinds of people would see them, right? And that sort of thing like that. So that's the idea is that, you know what I mean? If Trudeau and Omer had children, right, with this lady here, that could produce that child. And if they were forced to live in the woods and these kinds of things, eventually some of them become this patty like sort of thing, right? So all of us can exist all at the same time, back and forth, and even really bizarre variations like this guy here, right? So here's my buddy on the right here. This I think this is a different one than the other fellow or lady. There's humps up in the front on that other picture, so I can't really tell it up. I can't see it blowing up enough. But clearly here, look at how thin these arms are. No actor on the planet. And look at the gigantic eyeballs, circumference they have for such a small little fellows, right? And they always have this seemingly buzzball hairdo, right? And this sort of thing. So these guys adapted to be quite small, right? But they're fully like a little Bigfoot chipman, right? And fully weren't known by scientists until just last year. And that still isn't discovered or proven by a scientist. But I mean, you can clearly see these are not actors in a suit, right? So now get a load of this one here. This one is the strangest thing I have ever seen. Does not seem to be a CGI film. It seems just a regular recorder like sort of thing going on. This guy happened to turn around, and this creepy dude was going to sneak up on him, and seemingly maybe eat him or attack him or whatever that they do, right? But there's no humans on Earth that have this thin of waist. Okay, so I can't believe that this is an actor in a suit. Now I do believe that it could be that this we're going to have to split this in two because there's so much more here. But I wanted to do the Trump one first in this sort of part because of the relevance right at this moment. And it's very interesting. I mean, this guy was mentioned by the psychic mass years ago. And when I saw his face in ages ago, I knew that this guy was heading for some kind of greatness of some sort. So uh, I kind of believe this guy, man. So I don't know. You know, like, there's some wild stuff out of there, but he's very fascinating, and he really could be a kind of guy like that, but also he could be just some part of the system, right? That somebody else is playing in the show. Yeah, you know, it's all these things. But anyways, you can't say these things yet, right? Like because and you got to give the guy a fair break in the sense that he hasn't done anything. He's not whatever, right? So it just because the psychic sees him as part of this thing, he's not really sure if he's causing it or that all he knows is that this guy has something to do with it, right? And sort of a thing like this. So this, I mean, it could be either way, right? So I mean, very interesting, anyways. But I mean, and oh, I'd forgotten to put on here, this is split in half. So next we'll be covering all the Bigfoot stuff. We got the Patterson thing and a bunch of other kinds of things in there. These fantastic, incredible lake monster films that are 100% legitimate and completely proves that a titanic angulus exists, and these mobile lake monster sorts, which have been reported worldwide for a gazillion years here in all kinds of waters of this, right? From the Ottawa River to piles of lakes and it's endless of this sort where they find these big tracks on the land in the spring or the fall, or saw the creature wiggling out and going in somebody's, one guy a potato field. I mean, the list is endless of these kinds of sightings, and they're truly real. It's based on a real thing. So, this, to me, like I've argued this for ages, I know like monsters, some are not known by science, others are, right? And they're both things, but the general public with the foolishness that the Loch Ness monster created all these other lake monsters when most of these are way older than Ness, and all these foolish things, and the people all thinking it's just one Loch Ness monster that's a billion years, and all this stuff is the most foolish gobbledygook in the universe, right, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I spent way more in the water than any researchers in this universe, and yeah, like I lived on water most of my life, right? So, like I mean, this kind of thing is very different, right? Like, so I know by investigating these lakes, seeing the amounts of fish that was in them, this, and actually having some sightings here and there, a sort of thing like that, of identifiable in the highest likelihood that the creatures, some known species but shouldn't be there, or be very few of where they were not any kind of thing that should be known to science, like in that sort of way, right? So these kinds exist there. The ancient history proves and everything. Why people always deny their ancestors. They all made fun of the shoot dog story of the Hound of Baskerville, sort of thing, and it attacked the church. They said it had flaming eyes of hell. The footprint's still there with the burn mark and the scratch of that. That they all thought it was made up by these priests, hallucination, and the priests, of course, fully believed that it was a devil dog because it was burning eyes. It breaks open a church, and it's known in the religion that evil things could take on some kind of form, right? So it's fully understandable why they believe that. However, the story is 100% real. I mean, it was near an 8 foot long, monstrous thing, exactly as they described. Everything's the same, and it's in the same church, proving they said that in their story that they gave it a Christian burial. Everything matches up. The creature was real. Shoot dogs were real. They're not imaginary, like still people, all kinds of shows I see say. These people are being foolish. It was excavated. The carcass, the real bones are there. It's 100% an unknown giant wolf-like species, right? So they were real. If one existed, others did too. All right, and that's so these guys told you the truth, right? And that sort of thing like that. So this is why I argue these things. I mean, people aren't going to write books and for the king, 15th century for their cooks, how to cook unicorns and the different parts, what to use, and all this. I mean, these things are ludicrous assumption that this was all made up. When you have records of their feed owned by these emperors and different royalty and things like this, right still there that you can look at, that it's showing that the dragon breeder got paid this much or a thing like this, and you really believe just because the Smithsonian Institution wants you to that they didn't exist, and certainly they did. We killed them off, right? And that there could actually still be some water like varieties of this sort of thing like that because there was water ones, but the flying ones in the highest probability. Except there's this one film from China that's pretty interesting that doesn't look to be CGI. It's been even analyzed that it doesn't look CGI. And it's strange. All the other ones are fake. They're some kind of robot-like thing and stuff. Like you can clearly see this, but this one film is Yeah. Hard to believe, but I mean, still they certainly did exist. I put on another show, a matching a land dragon. No creature on Earth was known in the 19th, the 20s to 40s era that had giant spikes on its back all across. Just died, still in perfect shape. The eyeballs there, little ear flap thing, everything. You couldn't tell if it had flippers or legs because the sand had it buried in it. But I mean, it's clearly a unknown species to science that matched 100% one of the kinds of dragons. There's even old drawings with the same kind of face that the creature has. So they existed and may have actually to the early 1900s, maybe the last one out there. It's possible, but in a Mormon monk's diary, 1800s, this church was attacked in England. The same thing, the creature busted through the door and killed two patrons. He doesn't say if they actually swallowed him or not, but then they started fighting at him and seemingly shoot him out the back of the church, and a bunch of them spearing at him and stuff. But then the papers is removed seemingly. So I find this very suspicious and strange, like as if something was said there that maybe I can't even find this thing anymore because when you look under dragon and all kinds of things, it doesn't show up. I found it by fluke by some other word that is like that, like serpent or some other thing, but actually the guy says dragon, right? And he describes saying that this thing like bit the guy's head, like sort of, it seems like he killed him or swallowed him possibly, right? So, I mean, he sounds pretty big, right? But I mean, they were fighting with this dude. So, just like this shoot dog story, I don't believe some monk guy in his personal diaries is going to write this stuff unless it has some base of reality. So, I mean, they certainly existed. And why people keep arguing about the Sasquatch phenomena, I hear these silly shows. There's this guy over in England, and he does and they all switched it to UAPs. I refuse to use this foolishness, right? These are just younger kids that got into the UFO phenomena in more recent times and wanted to snooty it up and be different, right? But I mean, it's completely ludicrous. Unidentified flying object, right? Unidentified aerial phenomena. I mean, really, it's meaning the exact same thing here. So you don't have to switch it to some. I'm old school. I'm not going to have some 14-year-old tell me to call it UAPs, right? So if the rest of the UFO gang want to do that, you go ahead. But I mean, I've know and seen these things in the sky myself. I know they exist. I've met people that were kidnapped. I know they exist, right? So somebody flies these things out there, right? And that sort of thing like that. And we're going to be talking about these aliens and God, like sort of thing here coming up with this re-evolution theory and stuff like that. But these these people really, when they write these things in these ancient manuscripts, they were real. They did not, you will never find anywhere in ancient history, like especially really older ancient history, you'll never find anywhere where, Socrates says, no, no, dragons don't exist like this. Like, you don't find any counterculture to say, no, they don't exist. Nobody. Every single one's worldwide have this, yet they don't see each other. They couldn't have known each other. They couldn't have any of this, right? But yet they all draw the same creatures and say the same things. Yet you fully believe that they didn't exist, right? Because the Smithsonian and early characters taught you that they didn't yet. You can find 1800s records, early 1900s records of museums all over the place. That means that every single scientist was a moron before so-called Darwin, right? And that everyone was an idiot, and that they mistaken a dragon for an alligator. Come on, I mean, really, can you not see these people are they've been hiding this stuff because it's a government-run agency, and they want you to believe in any other alternative than a godlike or sort of a creator of any sort, right? Like in this kind of thing. Our governments are corrupt. They always have been, right? They're run by corrupt sorts of characters, right? So, I mean, this is fully understandable, and how they can convince a lot of people they're brilliant people by simply tweaking things, right? And of course, a lot of scientists may even know actually the truth, but they may be forced behind the scenes, right? Like if you say that, your career is going to be gone, right? Just like the Mary Schweitzer and this kind of things, because it upset them, right? I mean, they fully admit to you on the side that you really can't measure the date of the dinosaur itself in the layer. They're only going by the layer, which is imaginary, and layers can fall on top. There's 10 million examples, like I said, of even watches in a billion-year-old layer, a half a million year old, yet it's a Timex watch or stuff. I mean, totally silly. You know what I mean, sort of thing. So they're just completely wrong about this. They always have been. And you can make machines to measure your presumption calculation, how much it would take a year to do this long, and this should make the million or whatever, right? But this is based on a theory. And of course, the machine will work, but it's based on the calculation of a theory that this many each time should be a year, and so that if you had 10 million of them, this should be that, right? Like, so any person can create these kinds of machines, but they're not actually proving the hypothesis, right? Like sort of thing. So anyways, we'll continue on with this next. But I mean, we're in scary times here. This is the first time even I can feel, I sense that there's some wild stuff coming up, and I mean it's out there. So anyways, but so I'm going to give this guy, this Mr. Barron Trump, the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'll end up being some good guy through it. Who knows? But it is scary, because no matter what, this guy has something to do with these kinds of times, right? That means that it's coming, right? So, like, I mean, I don't like this, right? So anyways, hopefully, this guy, this Barron Trump is way later. It'd be nicer like 30, 40 years from now. Like, the farther the better, right? Sort of thing like that. But anyways, hopefully these things will calm down here. But we'll continue on here.